I quit my $120,000 job at 23 years old after I learned these 4 things. At the time, I was the youngest sales manager in my office. I had the income, I had the apartment, I had the lifestyle that goes along with it, and I felt like I had really made it. To me, these 4 lessons were so valuable that I gave it all up, and in the year since I quit, I lost the apartment. I had to move back in with my parents, and it's been pretty hard, but to this day, I will tell you, it was the best decision that I have ever made, and even after knowing everything that I know now, I would still do it again in a heartbeat. What do you want to be when you grow up was always a really daunting question to me, and still to this day, I'm not really sure that I could give you an answer. What I could tell you was that for what seems like my entire life, the only thing that really motivated me was making money. And I mean, this goes way back. The minute I turned 14, I got my mom to drive me around town so I could get a part-time job because I was so eager to get out there and start making money. That desire to make money was the determining factor in so many decisions I made. It's the reason I went into lifeguarding, it's the reason I went to business school, and it's the reason I went into sales once I graduated. And don't get me wrong, I still love making money, and I think money is awesome and you can do a lot of great things with it, but it wasn't until I felt like I really had it, where I could rent my own apartment, start investing, go on trips if I wanted to, where I really started to feel like, is this it? Which is the first lesson that I learned, that money is nothing without purpose. In theory, I should have loved that job. I learned a lot, it was super social, you could literally get paid based on how hard you worked with an uncapped commission, and yet I still couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't really what I was supposed to be doing with my life. I felt like that Squidward meme where he's kind of just going through the motions day by day, every single day counting down the hours until the weekend, and then when it was the weekend, there was a new countdown as the clock got closer to Monday. I am a firm believer that yes, money can buy you happiness, but for me, the way that you earn that money and finding the thing that gives you purpose is also really important, which is why I think that one of the greatest blessings of adulthood is getting to rediscover what you love doing as a kid. And as you can see by this picture from Christmas in 2006, when I got my first video camera, I was pretty excited. If you're struggling to find your purpose or figure out what type of work will fulfill you while also making you enough money to live, I'd recommend checking out the Japanese concept of Ikigai, where you can find your dream career or your reason for being when you find the thing at the center of what you love to do, what you're good at, what you can be paid for, and what the world needs. If you can find that thing at the very center of it all, not only will you find a lucrative career that fulfills you, but you'll also live a longer and happier life. Now, you don't have to have all of the answers right now in terms of what your purpose is. I mean, I sure don't have mine, but we're fortunate enough to live in a time where you can monetize or make work out of any skill or hobby that you have. So if you don't know where to start, think about the things you loved doing when you were a kid. Maybe it was photography or music, writing, sports, whatever it may be. Because I can tell you right now, as a full-time content creator, even though I'm working just as hard, if not harder than my last job and making less, I'm never counting down the days until the weekend. I'm never upset to work on the weekends, and Monday mornings, I'm always excited to get back to it. I might do a full video on Ikigai in the near future because I've been reading up on it a lot recently, but in the meantime, I'll post a link in the description to this book right here. Right after university, I went through sort of an identity crisis, and I think it might be something that a lot of people in their early 20s go through, which is that my entire identity for the past 16 years of my life has been being a student. And now that I'm no longer a student, who am I? When I was in high school or when I was at university, I was very short-sighted in my thinking, like, oh, next year I'll be in 4th year, or when I graduate, I'm gonna be working in sales. But when you do graduate and you enter the corporate world, it's like all of a sudden a million different paths open up in front of you, and you figure out who you are apart from being a student or an employee, and then decide the path that you're gonna go down. My whole life up until I was like 21, I would have told you that I was gonna be a millionaire by the time I was 25. No question. I didn't know how I was gonna do it, but I had decided that was something that I was going to do. But then all of a sudden, I'm 23 years old, working some corporate job with nothing but years ahead of me. And I remember thinking to myself, this is not who I said I was going to be, that right now I am not the person I always thought I was or was planning on being. Which is where the second thing I learned came in, that you have to take the risks while you can, because playing it safe is only gonna keep you stuck. When I quit my job, I was single, I had no kids, no mortgage, no debt, I had enough in savings to last me for a few months, and the absolute worst case scenario was that I would have to move back in with my parents, who I am forever grateful for, and have to get another job. The best case scenario was that I was gonna be able to work for myself and create a lucrative career doing something that I love doing. Now, I turned 25 in just a few months, and it's not looking like I will be anywhere close to a millionaire by then, but that's okay because I'm happy with the choices that I've made. If all goes downhill and in 5 years from now I'm back working a corporate job, I can live with the fact that I gave it my best shot, but what I couldn't live with is the regret of never trying. Because one of my biggest fears is getting to the end of my life and regretting that I didn't do enough, that my bucket wasn't full, so to speak, in terms of the things I did, saw, and learned, and the people I met along the way. A life where I worked the same job, daydreamed my days away, always putting off what I really wanted to be doing, waiting for a time in the future where I would be ready. But the day where I finally felt ready never came, and then one day I woke up and realized it was too late. And I know that's a way that a lot of people live, and as someone who spends a lot of time in their head, I know that I'm at very real risk of letting that happen to me too. And I think the only thing worse than the fear of missing out is the knowing that you did miss out. Like if this was everything everywhere all at once, being like Evelyn and finding out that there is an infinite amount of parallel universes and you are the one version of yourself that reached the lowest amount of potential. Now, whether or not there is actually an infinite amount of universes out there, I'm not too sure, but if there is, I want to be at least in the top 20%, which goes back with the last lesson that I was talking about. I always said I was going to start my own business or be some sort of content creator, and I wasn't really sure if never giving it a go was something that I could live with. I'm not gonna lie, getting older and aging scares me a little bit, but I read this quote recently and it really stuck with me, and it basically said that the old man will never envy those who are still enjoying their youth if his life was full. So when I thought about that and how I could create a life for myself that was as full as possible, it wasn't going to be working some traditional corporate job for the next 40-something years of my life, which is something that I really do want to incorporate into my content moving forward. And that's really like living a rich life. And yes, that includes being rich financially. Like I said, making money has always been a huge motivator for me, but also rich in terms of life experiences and relationships and continuing to learn about random shit that I find interesting for the rest of my life. While I was working at my old job, my boss recommended to me that I read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, which is another great book, especially if you're interested in your future and personal finance. But one thing that Robert talked about in that book, and one thing that my old boss and really the company culture focused on, was you should work to learn, not to earn. And maybe it was my boss's mistake for recommending me that book, but the author talks about how most people are one skill away from great wealth. That most self-made millionaires accumulate a number of different skills as they grow older, and then one day they use all of these skills that they've acquired to create a business that has contributed to their massive wealth. The rich don't seem to have acquired wealth simply by being in a rat race. He says that workers work hard to not get fired, and owners pay enough so that workers won't quit, because most people are just looking towards their next paycheck, but not the future as a whole. The most valuable thing you have is the skills you possess, not your job title or the money in your bank account. You could lose your job tomorrow, the value of your money will erode due to inflation, but you can always generate wealth from the skills you possess that can solve problems or add value to other people. It's kind of corny, but as the saying goes, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day, teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. And I am so grateful for that job because sales in itself is such a good skill to have that comes up in so many areas of life. And I attribute that job so much to me being able to speak to a camera, speaking concisely, negotiating with brands. It's a very transferable skill. And I feel like I developed my sales skills for 2 years. Of course, I could have learned more. You can always learn more. But I didn't want to be a salesman for the rest of my life. So I took that lesson my boss might have accidentally handed down to me, took the skills and things he taught me, and went out on my own to try and build something for me. Which is why I kind of hate videos I see talking about escaping the rat race or ditching the 9-to-5. There are so many life skills and so much value you can gain from those environments, even if it isn't something you see yourself doing for the rest of your life. So if you do want to build a life that is rich in more ways than one, think about those things you loved doing as a kid. Figure out ways you can monetize it, continue working on the skills you need to succeed, and take the risks while you still have the chance. Because even though it can be hard and stressful, it's been one of the most rewarding things that I've ever done.